gone.
Yeah.
Sorry
Well,
about that.
I think we all agree we've just seen a remarkable film.
Thank you.
Pier-Philippe, what I found most fascinating in reading the background about this film and about you is that you originally set out to make this as a documentary and couldn't do it, and in getting to a truth, you created fiction. Right. What made you decide, what was the process that made you decide to do that?
So I began working on this project almost, actually over 10 years ago now. I had done a short film called Tala on the temporary foreign workers program, but through the eyes of a Filipino housemaid. And during the course of making that film, I had also done a lot of research on the farm workers, basically. And I had collected a lot of information, especially allegations from workers' defense group that would say that through this program there's exploitation and abuse and a form of modern-day slavery. And back then in 2013, we didn't really speak that much about it. Like in the past few years, a lot of newspaper articles have come into the spotlight. But back then, nobody was talking about it. And I basically set out to do a documentary to try to see whether those allegations were true or not. And I came back home to my hometown in the Richelieu Valley and started asking questions, started meeting workers. And then I understood why there had been like no films or no documentaries yet on that issue. It's just because the people who have been through exploitation or abuse, they didn't want to speak out.
Don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, they were afraid of losing their jobs and everything. So through fiction was kind of the only way to tell the truth, because that way I could actually say, things that were real, but also protect the anonymity of people who would speak to me. And so we went to Guatemala. We, meaning myself and Ariane, the actress. She was involved in the research process as well, and she acted as my real-life translator as we went couch surfing in Guatemala. We were referred to about a dozen workers who claimed to have lived situation of exploitation. We got their testimony, and the script is basically a collage of everything they told us.
So in the fiction, there's an awful lot of truth. I mean, it does have a documentary. The whole film, which is remarkably filmed, does have a documentary feel about it, which I presume is intentional on your part.
Yeah, well, the use of over-the-shoulder camera and these long takes, it feels like things are happening in front of you without it being staged, but it also creates a sense of suspense. I think that form, it's not just that it feels documentary-like, it's also that it creates suspense and tension, which is why we decided to film it that way. So yeah.
Well, and it does, particularly as the film reaches its climax. I mean, it's the second time I've seen it, and I was still tense watching it. So. And she's marvelous in the movie. Ariane is an incredible discovery. Had she acted before?
So Ariane, I met her when she actually auditioned for a short film of mine that I did like in 2016, and she was amazing in audition. So much so that I wrote a bigger part for her in the short film, and we were carpooling all the way to the rehearsals and just chatting and beginning to know each other. And she told me she was half Guatemalan, which I didn't know. And I told her I was working on a project with Guatemalan workers, and it's kind of like that the film was, or this meeting was meant to be in a way. And so I began writing the script with the main character named Ariane, because I wanted when they read the script to see her, to picture her when they were reading it. And she has acted before. She's a professional actress, but it's so hard, especially in Quebec, if you're part of a minority, to get to land big leading roles. She's done a lot of TV, but this is actually her first feature film. So
she's remarkable.
She is
in the movie, as is everybody else. And you went to Guatemala to get actors who could play these parts of the workers?
So yeah, some of them, yes, but the thing is we shot during COVID. So it was really hard to have people fly in. The intention initially was only to cast people who actually lived in Guatemala, not like Canadian citizens that had Guatemalan origins.
Right.
And so we did auditions in Guatemala City, and we casted 2 roles, but we couldn't like have everybody fly in. So we ended up, going back to Canadian citizens, but who were actually Guatemalan. And we casted 2 Mexican actors also to be in the film. One of which we've decided to have him not pretend to be Guatemalan. So this is why there's this one Mexican character, because everybody said, yeah, no, his accent doesn't work. So we might as well just have him be Mexican in the film. So.
And they're working as huskers in what? Is it a cannery that they're working in? Or?
It is, yeah.
And how are you able to get in? Because it all looks very realistic.
So
it's shot on location. How did you ever get into these locations?
So the inside, the factory floor is an actual food transformation plant, but they did not hire migrant workers, so that whole issue was not a problem for them. We just basically rented the place during a weekend, and we shot the scenes in there, and then everything else is shot elsewhere, like the outside where they're actually working, shoveling all day long. That's a set. That's a movie set, basically. It's a tire factory, just the outside of a tire factory, and we just built this thing on set using actual drone footage of other factories to reconstruct like the installation that they had over there. But it was all made up. The magic of cinema.
And I'm always fascinated by how long you had to shoot all this. As an independent filmmaker, with everybody should know your first film. How many days did you have to shoot this?
25 days. Yeah, 25 days. Sometimes I say 25 days, depending where I am in the world. They say, "Oh, that's a lot," and sometimes they say, "Oh, that's really not a lot."
Well,
it was enough for us.
Part of the world that doesn't think that's a lot.
Yeah, probably.
The other thing that really impressed me was the screenplay. Had you written scripts before?
This is my first feature. I've done a lot of short films before, but this is my first feature. But it took. Thanks.
Yeah, bravo.
It took 10 years to write also. Like I had several, I think version 35 is the one we shot, so. Yeah.
So, first film, never written a script before, actors that most people would never have heard of. How difficult was it to get the film made with all those things kind of working against you, I would think?
Because it took so long, and I think that's the reality of filmmaking in Quebec and in Canada. It takes so long to write scripts and develop projects. By the time we got the funding ready to shoot, I had done so many short films. I felt I was ready to make my first film for sure. The one thing that was really hard is we shot during COVID. And especially my idea was to make all these long takes where people had to be in close proximity, and we actually shot just a few weeks until the health laws kind of toned down in Quebec, because if we had begun shooting two weeks earlier, people couldn't be without masks closer to each other. So that was very stressful, and also we lost locations throughout the shoot. Like the hospital, it's not a hospital, it's like a foster home that we transformed because we lost the hospital because there was a spike of COVID cases during the production. So that was a real challenge, was COVID. Yeah.
Well, it sure looks like a hospital. So
great, thanks.
Great stuff. Let's open it to some questions from the audience, if we can. Jasmine has the microphone.
Do you think that it is better now than it was in 2013 when you first started to look at the situation for the migrant workers?
To my knowledge, it's gotten worse.
Really?
Because the sheer number of migrant workers that are coming to Canada now has exploded. Like back in 2013, I think it was about 60,000 Canada-wide, and now it's 60 to 70 100,000 just in Quebec and something like 400,000 in Canada.
Wow.
Because of shortages of manpower in every sector. It used to be just like the farm world, but now it's open up to like the restaurants and everything because there's so much shortage of manpower, and we're going to rely more and more on that workforce as population is declining. So cases like that are bound to happen more.
Yeah. So it really isn't better.
To my knowledge, no. But we're talking about it more than we used to also, and I think that's the beginning of hopefully change. Like when people are more aware that stuff like this is happening, and in some way we're all complicit. The minute that population demands change is gonna happen, and the first step is making sure that everybody is aware that stuff like this can happen. And it doesn't mean that it's like that everywhere. Of course, there are in some farms, people are treated very, very well, but. From what I'm told, a significant proportion of migrant workers will see some form of, exploitation. It's not necessarily going to be handing up to the hospital, but it can be like something very subtle, like being asked for overtime and not being allowed to say no. But when you start adding all these little things together, it starts to feel like, there's a form of abuse for sure.
Anyone else for Katie?
Did you say that one of the actors did some of the music? Did I hear you say that?
She was asking if, one of the actors did the music. So the actor who plays guitar in the film, he actually wrote all the songs that he's singing in the song. Because we didn't get the rights to any of the music that I had in mind, so I ended up like 2 times during the shoot just asking him like the night before, can you write something, because I don't think we're going to be able to get the rights. So he wrote the songs for us.
It's amazing. We have somebody else? Yes, sir.
Oui, alors Pier-Philippe, merci d'être là ce soir, parce que c'est vraiment apprécié que tu sois avec nous ici. Et puis, tes renseignements nous informent beaucoup, alors c'est fort apprécié. Dis-moi, c'est une question qui t'intéresse depuis une dizaine d'années que tu mentionnais. Qu'est-ce qui t'a amené à étudier ou à être intéressé à cette question-là?
Est-ce que je réponds en français? Should I answer?
En anglais, s'il vous plaît.
In English, okay, and maybe peut-être qu'on peut se parler en français après. Je vais répondre en anglais. Ça vous dérange? Je m'excuse. Je vais répondre en anglais puis on se parle après en français. So he was asking what interested me to this topic in the first place, and all of my short films have always been based on social issues, but in that case, I done that short film Tala that was on the temporary foreign workers program, and in the meantime, someone that I know personally actually worked in a factory, and she witnessed that sort of exploitation, and that was the starting point of me wanting to get involved and make that film. But all of my films are always based on social issues, so that's like always the starting point for me, because that's what feels really interesting to me. So yeah.
What's been the response in Quebec to the film in terms of having any effect on what's going on with these workers?
For sure, they've talked about it a lot. The press has used it. Radio-Canada, the French CBC, has used the film a lot to bring that topic into view. And a lot of journalists actually told me, like, thank you for making this film, because we've tried for years and years and years to bring stories like that to the forefront, and it's the people who lived or experienced exploitation, they ended up asking us not to publish because they were afraid of blackmail or retribution, of losing their job. So in a way, like, fiction was really the only way to make it happen, to bring this into the spotlight. And it just so happens that this past year, a lot of articles have come up. The UN special reporter has said that the temporary foreign workers program in Canada is actually a form of modern-day slavery, and Canada should try to look into that and reform it. So I feel like things are moving because people are talking about it. Yeah.
We just saw Mr. Dress Up, a documentary about the nicest guy in Canada last night. And any ideas that we had that we're the nicest country in the world kind of went out the window this afternoon.
But that's the one thing, because the film has been shown in a lot of countries, and that's the one thing everybody keeps saying, like that's not the idea of Canada that people have abroad, for sure.
I don't think it's the idea most Canadians have of Canada. I think it's kind of shocking to see this. But any other questions? Have we got anybody else? Hi.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon. That was a great film.
Thank you.
I've been learning about this when I was in school at university about environmental justice and environmental racism and how the migrant workers program plays a role. I noticed, and I've lived for the past 10 years or previously in Quebec, and I noticed that there is, in your movie, in your film as well, there is an undertone of not only exploitation, but the racism that others these migrant workers and makes them feel lesser than Canadian citizens or Canadian residents. And I just wanted to ask you if you felt that way as well. Was that your intention as you put this piece together? Thank you.
Of course there's racism, that's obvious, and there's racism everywhere. I mean, it's not specific to Quebec. If that film would have been shot in Alberta or wherever, situations like that exist, because there's racism all over the place. And in that specific instance, like the people in power, of course, were motivated by racism. And I also tried to show in the film that basically everybody is part complicit and part victim in the chain, like all the way to the top, the boss. He also has to answer to his own boss. And to me, it's not just racism, it's capitalism, the problem, because we're all a part of it. We're all both complicit and both victims of it. And it's about just realizing that and maybe stepping out or finding ways to change so that exploitation is not possible. But of course, racism plays a part into it, for sure.
Anyone else?
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Est-ce que les acteurs que vous avez mentionnés qui devaient participer dans le film au Guatemala originalement, ceux qui n'ont pas pu faire partie du film, est-ce qu'ils ont vu le film maintenant?
Je vais répondre en anglais encore.
I can say it in English as well, but I was asking if the people that were supposed to be in the film originally from Guatemala actually have seen the movie because they were not in it.
I don't think so. The ones that we casted and that ended up not, because what happened is we casted people, but they didn't get their visa in time because it was just so long delays at that moment to have the visas. I don't think they've seen it. But the thing is, we're going. The film has been shown in Guatemala twice. There's been a festival, Icaro, in Guatemala City that has shown it. But we're going back in March. We're doing a tour, and we're going back to all the villages that we went when we did our research to. We're basically doing what they call an itinerant screening kind of thing. We're bringing the screening equipment, the screen and everything, and we're going to be showing it in the villages to the workers that helped us that initially when we did the research. So it's very hard in Guatemala because there are a few commercial cinemas, but they're all owned basically by American majors. So showing foreign films over there is really, really hard.
Sounds like Canada.
Yeah. It's even worse over in Guatemala, trust me. So we're going there and trying to get the film seen over there as much as possible because it's also meant as a cautionary tale for them to, so they know what to expect if they ever come through the program.
Je suis certain qu'ils vont apprécier.
On verra bien. Merci.
Anyone else? So what has this done for you? It's such a remarkable film. It's remarkably well shot, remarkably well written and acted. What's this done for you as a filmmaker? Do you have another project?
I do, yeah. I'm working on a second feature. I've just did another short film that I'm finishing right now, and I'm almost done with the script in my second feature, which hopefully we'll be shooting next year. So.
Well, listen, I know you've traveled all over with this film. Pier-Philippe and I, we really appreciate you coming here this afternoon to talk to us. And Pier-Philippe has driven all the way from Montreal just to be here this afternoon. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you ever so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup d'être venu aussi.